Snow had crusted over with a hard silver skin by the time Luna stopped feeling her toes. She stumbled downhill through black pines, one hand braced on her lower back, the other locked over the swell beneath her cloak. Every breath burned. Her lungs still tasted like smoke from the ambush, and blood, her mate's blood, had dried in a stiff rust line across her sleeve where she had tried to hold his throat closed and failed. "Run!" he had rasped. "Luna, run!" Now his voice chased her between the trees, and so did the riders. She could hear them when the wind dropped, harness bells muted with wool, hooves wrapped in leather to muffle sound, men who hunted their own as if it were a sport. Guinevere Frostborn's crest flashed between trunks whenever moonlight struck metal, a white fox fang on blue. Luna slipped on ice and hit her knees. Pain shot through her hips. The pup kicked once, a tiny hard flutter against her palm, and terror hit so sharply she almost vomited. "I know," she whispered, teeth chattering. "I know, little moon. I'm moving." Behind her, a horn blew two short notes. They had seen her tracks. She forced herself up and kept going, ducking under branches that clawed at her hair. Her braid had come loose hours ago. Snow melted down the back of her neck. Every few steps she had to stop and swallow panic because panic took air, and air was all that kept her upright. By the time she reached the old border shrine, a ring of standing stones half buried in drift, dedicated to the Mother Moon before the pack split their lands, her vision had gone grainy at the edges. She dropped one glove to press her hand against the central stone for balance. Warmth pulsed once under her skin, not from the rock, but from her womb. Alive. Still alive. Then the riders poured in. 6 of them, cloaks rimed white, wolves pacing beside 3. Their faces were shadowed by fur-lined hoods, but she knew their voices. "Found her," one called. "The widow witch." Luna turned slowly, trying not to look like prey. "I am Luna Stoneheart, lawful Luna by bond and oath. Let me pass the border, and I will never return." A woman on a gray mare laughed. "Captain Celine, Guinevere's blade arm." "Lawful? Your mate's corpse is barely cold and you ask law from us?" "He was murdered." "He died in a border skirmish," Selene corrected, "as traitors do." Luna's nails bit her palm. "He rode under a peace flag. Then he died carrying lies." The wolves began to circle. One sniffed the air and whined, ears flattening as it neared her belly. Selene noticed and smiled with all her teeth. "There, you feel it too." She dismounted, boots crunching over ice. The cursed blood. Guinevere was right. "Do not call my child cursed." "Your child?" Another rider spat. "That thing is the rot in Stoneheart's line. A grave witch seed." Luna backed against the standing stone. "I have done nothing but obey the laws of Pack and Moon." Selene stepped close enough that Luna smelled clove oil and steel. "You were mated to a rebel. You carry rebel blood. The court has judged you. Without me there? Witches aren't granted a hearing." 2 riders seized her arms. She fought on reflex, elbowing one in the throat, but exhaustion made her clumsy. A fist slammed into her ribs, breath exploded out of her. She doubled over, both hands going to her belly, and one of the men barked a laugh. "Look at her, protecting it like it matters." "It matters," Luna gasped. "Not by dawn." They dragged her to the center of the stones where an old ritual pit sat frozen and half-filled from autumn rains. Selene knelt and took Luna's chin in a gloved grip, forcing her to meet her eyes. "By order of Lady Guinevere Frostborn, acting under emergency court powers, Luna Stoneheart is named Grave Witch, bearer of cursed blood, corrupter of line. Sentence: burial before first light." Luna thrashed, but one rider twisted her wrists behind her and bound them with rawhide. "You can't. This shrine is neutral ground." "Neutral ended when your mate chose treason." "He chose peace." Selene struck her across the face, hard enough that stars burst behind Luna's eyes. He chose to stand between Guinevere and what is owed her. That was his last mistake. That sentence cut deeper than the blow. For one stunned second, even the cold seemed to recede. Not skirmish, not accident. Owed her. They had killed him because he blocked a claim. Luna went very still. You planned it. Seleni's smile thinned. Bury her. The breaking point had started hours earlier, in a candlelit room that still smelled like her mate's cedar soap and wet leather. Luna had been kneeling on the floor, head against the side of their bed, trying to memorize his scent before it faded from the blankets. The hall outside had churned with bootsteps and whispered strategy since dusk. Too many officers for grief, not enough for mourning. No one had come to her except an old kitchen maid with cold tea and shaking hands. Near midnight, voices sharpened outside her door. The widow cannot remain in the keep, a man hissed. Councillor Brevik, she knew his dry, papery tone. If she whelps, the pup could rally Stoneheart loyalists. Another voice, smooth and female, Guinevere. Then she must not whelp. Luna froze, every muscle locking. The healers will ask, then we do not call healers. A pause. I had the temple seer prepare a tonic. Too much moon root, too little foxleaf, a tragic bleeding. She is already unstable with grief. No one will question it. Brevik lowered his voice further. And if she refuses the tonic? She won't. Silk rustled. Tell her it was her mate's last request. Something inside Luna snapped with terrible clarity. Not fear. Decision. She rose without sound, wiped her face with her sleeve, and moved to the trunk at the foot of the bed. No time for clothes, no time for keepsakes. She took only what she could hide beneath her cloak: a skin of water, dried venison, flint, and her mate's bone-handled knife. On instinct, she also took the small carved wolf pup he had made the day she told him she was with child. When the corridor outside quieted, she cracked the servant hatch behind the tapestry and slipped into the crawl space, belly scraping rough wood. Dust clogged her throat. She bit her knuckle to keep from coughing. Below her, in the main hall, she heard Brevik again. At dawn, we announced that Captain Stoneheart died in rebel contact. Died. Not was killed. Not was ambushed. Died, as if weather had taken him. Luna's vision blurred, but she kept moving, inch by inch, until she reached the old grain chute that emptied into the winter stores. She dropped, landed badly, pain lancing up her ankle, and almost cried out. Instead, she pressed both hands over her belly and breathed through her teeth until the cramp passed. The stores were dark and bitter cold. She found a side door, unbarred because no one expected a pregnant widow to climb through walls, and stepped into the yard. Night hit her like a blade. Snow drove sideways in glittering sheets. Torches flared on the battlements above, guards hunched against wind, watching the road, not the kennels. Luna moved along the shadow of the outer wall, ducking behind stacked firewood and frozen carts, then slipped through the dog run where old hounds dozed nose to tail in straw. One lifted its head, sniffed, and recognized her. It thumped its tail once and let her pass. At the postern gate, she nearly turned back. The world beyond was black, wild, unknown. Inside was murder wearing court silk. She heard Guinevere laugh somewhere high in the keep, faint, carried by wind, and she shoved the gate open. The hinges shrieked. A shout rose behind her. Who goes there? Luna ran. Snow swallowed her calves. Branches whipped her cheeks raw. Her breath tore in and out, white and ragged. She did not know where the border truly lay in the dark. She followed the stars when clouds broke, the slope of land when they vanished, and the simple, savage command pounding through her blood. Live. For the pup. Live. When dawn paling touched the horizon, horn calls answered from two directions. Riders had split to flank her. She changed course toward the old shrine because neutral ground might buy words if not mercy. It bought her none. They dug with spades first, then with boots, when the frost-hardened earth resisted. The pit was shallow because Winterstone fought them, but deep enough. Deep enough to hold a woman who had no allies left. Luna's wrists were still bound when they lowered her in. Her shoulders struck frozen mud. Pain flashed bright. She bit back a cry. Above her, the ring of standing stones cut the sky into uneven slices of iron gray. Celine looked down, snow collecting in her lashes. "Confess, and I'll make it quick." "I confess," Luna whispered, voice scraped raw, "that you fear a child." Celine's mouth flattened. "Fill it." The first shovelful hit her legs with a heavy thud. Instinct made Luna twist onto her side, then onto her back, trying to arch her body over her belly. Dirt and ice clods rained down, striking her hips, ribs, thighs. She coughed as powdery soil filled her nose. Someone above murmured a burial chant once used for plague dead. Another laughed through it. "Grave witch, grave witch." Should have burned her. No smoke in this weather. Let the earth take her. She kicked, bucked, tried to sit, but weight climbed her body. Knees pinned, then waist, then chest. Panic detonated. She sucked one desperate lungful and screamed, "Mother Moon, witness me." A boot heel appeared over the edge. Celine leaned in for the last time. No moon hears witches. Earth slammed over Luna's mouth. Darkness swallowed shape and sound together. The world became pressure, cold, and the drum of her own blood roaring in her ears. She forced her lips closed against grit and worked her bound hands, skin tearing, until one wrist slipped free. She brought both palms to her belly, curled around it as best she could beneath crushing weight. Please. No prayer had words for this. Only need. A flutter answered under her hand. Small, stubborn, alive. 1. Luna breathed into the dirt. She counted because counting was structure, and structure held madness back. 1 heartbeat. 2. Above, muffled through layers of frozen soil, hooves thundered across the shrine grounds, different rhythm, faster, unhidden. Shouts. Not Celine's. Then a voice like storm over rock, furious and close. Who buried her here? The earth above her shifted. Weight lifted from her chest in sudden jerks. Cold air knifed through a crack, then moonlight spilled in a thin blade across her face, though dawn had already started. Pale winter sun refracted on ice, silver as moonfire. Hands tore at the grave mound, bare hands, fast, relentless, heedless of blood. Soil broke away from her shoulders. A broad figure dropped to his knees at the pit's edge, hair black with snowmelt, scarred forearms red to the elbow from clawing through frozen ground. For one suspended second, Luna saw only his eyes, wolf-bright, stunned, locked on hers as if the world had narrowed to this grave and the 2 breaths inside it. Somewhere above them, men were shouting orders, steel ringing free. He didn't look away. And beneath his ragged breathing, beneath hers, there were 2 heartbeats, and he had heard them both. And beneath his ragged breathing, beneath hers, there were 2 heartbeats, and he had heard them both. "Hold the line!" Someone roared behind him. Steel clashed. A wolf screamed. The man at the edge of her grave dropped flat, reaching down with both arms. "Can you move?" Luna tried to answer and coughed mud instead. He swore, low and vicious, then slid halfway into the pit, heedless of the collapsing sidewall, and hooked one arm behind her shoulders, the other under her knees. He lifted. Frozen earth sucked at her cloak, then released with a wet, tearing sound. Cold air hit her face hard enough to sting. She dragged in a breath that felt like knives and clung to him on instinct, fingers digging into leather and muscle. The instant her skin met his throat, something detonated. Not outside, where blades still rang and men shouted. Inside. Heat shot up her spine, fierce and electric, like lightning finding bone. The world sharpened violently, the iron tang of blood, the resin of pine torches, snow, wet wool, male skin, and beneath all of it a scent that struck straight through panic. Cedar after rain, storm wind over stone. Her pulse lurched to meet his. Her wolf, silent since the ambush, slammed awake and surged against her ribs with a wild, disoriented cry. Mine. The thought wasn't hers. Or it was. And she hated it. The man jerked like he'd been struck across the chest. His eyes flashed. Human gray blown wide, then flooded molten gold. He sucked in a sharp breath and went utterly still, even while chaos raged around him. Snow caught in his lashes. Blood ran from split knuckles where he'd clawed through the grave. His stare locked to hers and held. Luna forgot to breathe. He swallowed once, hard, and she watched the motion in the thick column of his throat. A scar cut across his jaw, pale against wind-burned skin. Another disappeared under his collar. A king's torque glinted at his neck beneath torn fur, black iron inlaid with moon-silver wolves. The hidden Alpha King, Theron Stormborn. She knew him only by rumor. War-born, crownless no longer, brutal in battle, colder in court. He was on his knees in bloodied snow, holding her like she might break. Mine, he whispered, voice hoarse with disbelief. The word cracked through her like a second strike. Guilt followed so fast she nearly retched. Her mate's blood on her sleeve, her mate's voice in her ears, run, run, run. And now this impossible pull dragging her toward another man while grief still bled open. Theron shut his eyes for one heartbeat, as if mastering himself by force. When he opened them, gold still burned there, but his voice was steadier. No. He shook his head once, fierce, correcting himself in front of his own guard and her dead and all the gods listening. My choice, if you choose me. A rider lunged from the left, blade raised. Theron moved without taking his gaze from Luna, drew a short sword one-handed and drove it backward under the attacker's ribs. The man dropped. Hot blood sprayed across the snow. Majesty, barked a guard captain. More coming through the birches. Theron rose with Luna still in his arms. She felt the tremor in him, not fear. Restraint, straining tight as wire. His wolf was awake too. She could feel it pressing at her skin through the bond, huge and storm-dark, wanting to claim, to protect, to kill. He did none of those things first. He looked down at her belly, where both her hands had gone again, and asked, "Can you feel the pup?" She nodded, dazed. Yes. Relief flared across his face, so naked it hurt to see. He turned toward his men. Shield her. 4 wolves shifted mid-stride, bones cracking, fur bursting through skin, and formed a wall of snarling gray around them. Arrows hissed out of the trees. Theron took the first on his shoulder and didn't slow. Selene's voice cut through the fight. That woman is condemned by Mooncourt authority. Yield her to Frostborn law. Theron stopped in the center of the shrine ring. Luna cradled against his chest and looked at Selene as if measuring where best to break her. His aura rolled out then. Alpha power. Old and lethal. It hit like pressure before a storm, flattening sound for a beat. Even the horses shied. She was buried alive on neutral stones, he said, quietly, more terrifying than a shout. By whose law? Selene gripped her reins with white fingers. By Lady Guinevere's emergency decree. Guinevere is not crown. Gold lit his eyes again. And you touched a pregnant wolf under sanctuary markers. No one moved. Theron's jaw flexed. Leave your dead and ride. You have until I count 5. Selena hesitated, hate warring with calculation. She was outnumbered now. Stormborn banners were cresting the ridge, black wolves on silver. She spat into the snow at Theron's feet. This isn't over. He didn't answer. He simply shifted Luna higher in his arms and turned his back on her. Celine wheeled her mare and fled with what remained of her riders. Only when the hoofbeats faded did Luna realize she was shaking so hard her teeth clicked. Adrenaline burned out, leaving raw pain everywhere, the bruise on her ribs, torn wrists, the crushing ache in her chest where grief lived. She tried to push away. "I can walk." "You nearly suffocated," Theron said. "I said I can walk." He paused, then lowered her carefully until her boots touched snow. The world tilted. She swayed. He put out a hand, but stopped short of touching her when she flinched. His fingers curled back into a fist. "Very well," he said. "Walk beside me then. Not behind." He shrugged off his cloak and held it out. It was heavy black wool lined with wolf fur, still warm from his body. Luna stared at it, then at him. "Why?" she whispered, meaning all of it. The rescue, the restraint. The way the bond screamed between them while he stood an arm's length away like a man before a skittish animal. "Because someone buried you," he said, voice roughening, "and I will not have you cold." She took the cloak. The mountain hideout was carved into the spine of the world, half fortress, half cave, with smoke vents cut through granite and narrow windows that watched 3 valleys at once. By the time they reached it, night had swallowed the slopes. Healers met them in the torchlit lower hall, old women with herb satchels, young men with steady hands. And Theron barked orders like a battlefield commander. "Check her lungs first, then the wrists. No moonroot in anything she drinks. Nothing unsealed leaves this room unless I taste it." The eldest healer arched a brow. "You think we poison our guests now?" "I think someone already did," he said. "Indulge me." Luna wanted to protest that she was not his guest, not his anything, but exhaustion dragged her under before the words formed. She woke to darkness and dirt in her throat. In the dream, she was back in the pit, earth pounding down, no air, no sky. Her mate called her name from somewhere she couldn't reach. The pup stopped moving. She clawed upward and her fingers struck wood, stone, bone. Luna came up with a strangled cry, thrashing. Her hand hit a table. A cup shattered. She sucked in breath that wouldn't stay in her lungs, chest heaving, vision tunneled. "Luna." Deep voice, near, but not on her. She whipped her head toward it. Theron stood by the hearth in shirt sleeves, hair damp as if he'd just come from snowmelt. Firelight cut his scars into bronze and shadow. He had no weapons on him. His hands were open at his sides. "You're in Stormhold," he said. "You're above ground. Breathe with me." "I can't." She clawed at the blanket tangled around her legs. "I can't." There was dirt. "I know." His voice stayed level. "Look at me." She did, because there was nowhere else to put the panic. "In for 4, he said, demonstrating, hand rising over his own chest. "Hold for 2. Out for 6. She tried and failed. He did it again. And again. Counted in that low storm voice until her lungs stopped trying to sprint out of her body. When the trembling eased enough that she could feel her fingers, he asked, very carefully, "May I come closer?" The question hit harder than command would have. She gave one jerky nod. Only then did he approach. He sat on the edge of the bed, slow enough that she could pull away, and draped his cloak around her shoulders instead of touching her skin. Warmth sank in. Her eyes burned suddenly, with fatigue and something dangerously like relief. "You don't have to," she began. "Yes," he said simply. "I do." He reached for the fallen blanket, retucked it around her legs, and paused at the swell of her ankles. They were puffy, bruised where the rawhide had cut circulation. "Permission?" he asked. She nodded again, bewildered. He knelt, an alpha king on stone floor, and wrapped soft fur bands around each ankle to keep swelling down, fingers deft, pressure gentle. No hunger in it, no entitlement, care, practiced and deliberate. When he stood, he crossed to the hearth and lifted a pot she hadn't noticed simmering, broth, rich and savory. He poured it into a wooden bowl, tested it on his wrist like one might for a child, then brought it to her. Slowly, he said. Luna took it with both hands. Steam fogged her face. The first sip nearly made her cry again. It tasted of marrow, salt, and thyme, of kitchens and safety she no longer trusted. Theron stayed where she could see him, but at distance, carving something with a small knife from a scrap of pale wood. Shavings curled onto his knee. "What are you doing?" she asked after a long silence. He turned the piece in his fingers. It had become a crescent moon with tiny holes bored through the center. He threaded a leather thong and 3 smooth seeds through it, making a faint, dry rattle. "My mother made one for me before my first shift," he said without looking up. "Said pups know rhythm before language." He held it out, not crossing the final space until she reached first. The carved moon was warm from his hand. "For the little one," he said, "if you want it." Luna closed her fingers around the rattle. It clicked softly, like a heartbeat answered. Confusion knotted with the bond's constant pull, and with grief that still sat like broken glass in her chest. She did not know what to do with a man who could rip open frozen ground with bare hands and then ask permission to touch her blanket. "Why are you restraining yourself?" she asked bluntly because she was too tired for diplomacy. "The bond is there. I can feel it clawing at me. You can too." His mouth thinned in something like pain. "Yes." "Then why?" Theron met her eyes. "Because you were mated. Because you were hunted. Because your body is carrying life, and your heart is carrying death. If I take one step you did not ask for, I become one more man who used your fear." Silence pressed, thick as snowfall. He set his knife aside and stood. "Sleep. I'll be outside the door." "You don't sleep?" "Kings nap when kingdoms stop trying to kill their mates," he said dryly. Her head snapped up at the word. He grimaced. "Apologies. Poorly chosen." But he didn't take it back. When he left, Luna lay awake a long time with the moon rattle in her palm and his cloak around her shoulders, listening to the steady cadence of his footsteps beyond the threshold until, for the first time since the ambush, sleep came without dirt. The neutral winter market met under a roof of stretched hide and carved beams at the valley crossroads, where 5 pack roads converged. No banners flew higher than another here by old treaty, and no claws were bared without consequence. In theory. Luna stood beside Theron at the back of the hall while council benches filled, alphas in fur and iron, envoys in jeweled collars, clerks with wax tablets. Whispers followed her like gnats. Grave witch, widow, cursed blood. She kept her chin level and one hand low on her belly where the pup rolled, slower now, stronger. Theron had offered to keep her in Stormhold for this gathering. She had said no. If Court was already using her name as weapon, she would hear it with her own ears. Now she was regretting exactly nothing and everything. A broad-shouldered alpha from Redtooth leaned across his bench and said, loudly enough for 3 rows, "Stormborn, is this your new strategy? Dig up brides from grave pits?" Laughter cracked around the circle. Another voice, thin, nasal, added, "Can't seat a grave witch widow beside a king. Bad omen for crops." Theron remained motionless, but Luna felt the atmosphere shift around him, pressure dropping before lightning. She touched his sleeve once, a warning and a plea. He glanced at her hand, then at her face, and inclined his head by a fraction. He was letting her choose response. So Luna stepped forward. "I stood at a border shrine," she said into the hall, carrying more clearly than she expected, "and was buried without trial under emergency decree from a woman who is not crown. If that is lawful precedent, then none of your daughters are safe when politics turn." A few mouths shut. Not all. A younger alpha in river blue rose, smiling without warmth. Big words from a displaced widow. Tell us, Luna Stoneheart, do you claim Stormborn's bed already, or only his pity? The bond flared hot at the insult. Luna's nails bit her palm. Before she could answer, the River Alpha vaulted the low divider and strode toward her. Theron moved to intercept. The other male reached first, hand out, fingers hooked for Luna's throat. Theron's scarred forearms slammed between them with a crack of bone against bone. The attacker staggered back, snarling. In the same breath, Theron's alpha aura detonated. It hit the hall like thunder made physical. Candles guttered out, papers flew, wolves in human skin froze mid-motion, some dropping to one knee before they caught themselves. The River Alpha went pale and took an involuntary step backward. Theron's voice cut through the stunned silence, each word edged in iron. Touch her again, and you challenge my line. No one laughed now. He turned, took Luna's hand. Careful, public, undeniable, and led her past the shelter benches to the raised crescent where ruling seats stood. He did not place her behind him. He seated her at his right hand, the war seat, where commanders sat and treaties were decided. Gasps rustled through the hall like dry leaves. Luna stared at the carved armrest beneath her fingers, then at him. Theron. Let them see, he murmured, not looking away from the council. Not hidden, not apologized for. The presiding elder, throat bobbing, banged his staff for order. Stormborn, this is irregular. Then record a new regular, Theron said. Debate resumed in harsher, tighter tones. Guinevere's envoys protested jurisdiction. Redtooth demanded inquiry. Two smaller pack leaders asked, unexpectedly, for witness testimony from the shrine. Luna listened, spoke when addressed, and did not lower her eyes once. By the time the market bells rang noon, no ruling was reached, but neither was she dismissed, silenced, or dragged out by guards. As the hall emptied, Luna remained in the war seat, pulse finally slowing. Theron stood beside her, one hand on the back of his own chair, waiting as if she were the one dismissing court. She looked up at him. The bond still ached. Grief still lived. Fear still had teeth. But when she spoke, her voice held steadier than before. Thank you, she said. Theron's expression gentled, storm easing at the edges. For what? For not making me kneel to be protected. Something like fierce pride flickered in his gold-flecked eyes. Get used to standing, Luna. She almost said, I'm trying. Instead, after a breath, she shifted her hand on the armrest until her fingers brushed the back of his. Brief, deliberate, her choice. She did not pull away immediately. She did not pull away immediately. Theron's fingers turned beneath hers, just enough to answer the touch without trapping it. Then boots struck stone behind them. A courier in mooncourt gray dropped to one knee at the foot of the dais, breath steaming, scroll tube clutched in gloved hands. For King Stormborn. Urgent seal. Theron took the tube, cracked wax with his thumb, and scanned. Luna watched his face harden by degrees. What is it? She asked. He handed her the parchment. The script was formal temple hand, copied for circulation. Recovered from the Southern Crypt Archives, Prophecy Fragment 9. When the buried mother rises unburned, she carries the ruin wolf in her womb. If seated at the king's right hand, bloodline and throne shall fracture by moonless spring. Beneath it, in a different hand, authenticated by Seer Halwyn of the Moon Temple. A tremor went through Luna so sharp she felt it in her teeth. Buried mother, not widow, not Luna, her. Convenient, Theron said, voice flat with danger. It appears the gods have learned court timing. The courier swallowed. Copies are already in 3 Valleys, Majesty. Redtooth posted one at their market gate before noon. Luna looked up from the page. Who recovered it? No source listed. Of course not. Anonymous relics were the cleanest weapons. Theron rolled the parchment tight enough to crease it. Find out which temple scribe copied first issue. Quietly. The courier bowed and fled. The hall had mostly emptied, but those still lingering stared openly now, eyes sliding from Luna's belly to the prophecy line as if they could read it through skin. Ruin Wolf. She rose from the war seat too quickly. The room swayed. Theron steadied the chair, not her. Luna, I'm fine. She folded the prophecy with careful, furious precision. She failed to bury me, so now she'll bury me in scripture. Theron did not ask who. He knew. At Frostborn House, the windows were cut tall and narrow like arrow slits, letting in light, but no warmth. Guinevere stood at a table of black oak, while a mason's chisel sang over stone. The tablet had started as an unmarked slab from an abandoned shrine quarry. Two men now crouched over it under lanterns, carving weather-cracked runes copied from a scrap of old liturgical script. One had dusted the grooves with ash and vinegar to mimic age. By dawn, it would look as though it had slept underground for centuries. Brevik hovered at Guinevere's shoulder, wringing parchment-thin hands. If anyone compares glyph forms, they'll see modern cuts. Then no one compares them, Guinevere said. They kneel before the word prophecy and do the rest themselves. Across the room, Seer Halwyn sat rigid in temple white, silver blindfold tied over milk-clouded eyes. He had not touched the wine set before him. I will not lie before Oathfire, he said, voice trembling despite effort. Authentication is sacred office. Guinevere crossed to him with measured grace and set a velvet pouch in his lap. Coins clinked heavy, crowns silver enough to buy 3 winters of temple grain. Then do not lie, she purred. Say only what is true, that the stone is old enough to have been old. She leaned closer. And that you sensed disturbance around the buried mother. I sensed fear, Halwyn whispered. Precisely. When he still hesitated, she nodded to Celine, who stood by the hearth polishing a dagger. Celine drew from her satchel a small bottle stoppered in wax. Clear liquid, faintly green in the light. Wolfsbane tincture, Guinevere said conversationally. 2 drops thinned into moonmint and honey causes cramping. 4 causes bleeding. 6. She tilted her head. You serve healers, Seer. You know anatomy. Halwyn's hands shook. You would kill an unborn? I would prevent a civil war wrapped in a cradle. Her smile cooled. Sign the authentication. He signed. Brevik exhaled, relieved and revolted together. And Stormborn? He'll contest. Not if the elders panic first. Guinevere moved back to the table, fingertips resting on carved prophecy as if claiming it by touch. We present this before Mooncourt. The old pacts demand stability. Stability requires a ceremonial royal bond. With you, Brevik said, with legitimacy. Her gaze sharpened. Then the widow is tried as corrupter and executed publicly. One clean sequence: prophecy, bond, purge. Celine sheathed the dagger. Stormborn won't surrender her alive. Then we make her die before he can shield her. Guinevere lifted the Wolfsbane bottle between 2 fingers. I'm told Stormhold healers are diligent, also underpaid. Find me one who likes silver more than conscience. Selene bared her teeth. I already did. The ride back to Stormhold happened under a sky like hammered steel. Luna sat wrapped in Theron's cloak, prophecy page hidden in her bodice where it burned like a brand. Wolves ranged the ridge in silent escort. Every village they passed seemed to have new notices nailed to posts, copies of the fragment, temple seal stamped in blue wax. The buried mother will birth the ruin wolf. By dusk, even stable hands were whispering it. Inside Stormhold, Theron doubled guard rotations and barred outside servants from Luna's floor. He gave orders clipped and relentless. Food tasted before serving, tonics checked by 2 healers, no private audiences. She watched him turn fortress into shield and hated that she needed one. And through it all, the bond pulled. At meals, she felt him before she saw him, a weather shift under skin. In meetings, her pulse changed when his did. At night, she woke knowing the exact moment he passed her door on patrol. Attraction threaded through fear and grief until she couldn't separate one from the other. On the third evening after market, healer Etta brought her a steaming cup. Lung tonic, the old woman said. Thyme, coltsfoot, moonmint, for the burial cough. Theron, standing by the hearth, held out his hand. I taste first. Etta rolled her eyes. Majesty, if I meant to poison her, I'd choose something less obvious than the cup I carry in front of you. He took a sip anyway, waited, then passed it to Luna. She drank. Bitter at first, then sweetened too strongly with honey. The taste lingered metallic at the back of her tongue. That night her belly cramped hard enough to fold her over. It passed in an hour. Etta blamed stress. Theron did not look convinced. The next day, another cup. This one brought nausea and a low ache in her spine. Stop taking it, Theron said. Luna pressed her palm into the knot beneath her ribs until it eased. If I refuse healer care, they'll say I'm unstable. They already call me Grave Witch. Let them speak. No, she said, sharper than intended. Words become laws in this kingdom. I won't hand them another. He crouched in front of her chair, forearms on his thighs, gaze level. And I won't watch you in pain because we fear gossip. Her throat tightened. I am so tired of being the battlefield. Something fierce and helpless moved across his face. Then let me fight where you can't. She laughed once, raw. That's exactly what terrifies me. A knock cut the moment. Captain Arik entered with a stack of sealed letters. Petitions from 5 packs. Elders request immediate Moon Court session on succession risk. Theron broke one seal, scanned, cursed. They're invoking Ancestral Crisis Clause. Luna held out her hand. He passed the page. Given circulating prophecy and public unrest, the Crown is urged to secure a stabilizing ceremonial bond with Lady Guinevere Frostborn by next full moon. Her vision narrowed at the edges. She moves fast. She planned this before the shrine, Theron said. The burial, the prophecy, the pressure campaign. It's one line. Luna looked up. And if you refuse? Then they accuse me of choosing lust over kingdom. His jaw flexed. If I accept, they use ceremony as pretext to eliminate you lawfully. There it was, the shape of the trap in full. Outside, wind slammed against the shutters. Inside, the fire popped, sudden and violent. Luna folded the petition with deliberate care. Then we don't give them either answer yet. His gaze held hers. What answer do we give? She thought of dirt in her mouth, of whispered ruin wolf, of a cup that tasted wrong. Evidence, she said, before they force a noose and call it custom. That night she couldn't sleep. Stormhold's upper terrace overlooked 3 moonlit ridgelines, all silver and shadow. Luna stood there barefoot despite the cold, wrapped in fur, moon rattle in hand. She shook it once. Seeds clicked softly. Behind her the door opened and closed without sound. I wondered where you vanished, Theron said. She didn't turn. If you tell me to go inside, I'll throw you over the parapet. Noted. He came to stand beside her, leaving a respectful span between their shoulders. For a while they listened to wolves calling across the valley. Luna broke first. I loved him. Theron's profile stayed still. I know. I still do. Her voice scraped. He taught me that wrist lock Guinevere's captain nearly broke my arm through. He carved the nursery lintel himself. We argued about names. She swallowed hard. He died with my blood on his hands because he pushed me behind him. Theron looked at her then, gold banked to gray in moonlight. Tell me his name. She blinked. Most people avoided it, as if speaking dead mates summoned bad luck. Kaelin, she whispered. Theron nodded once, solemn as oath. Kaelin Stoneheart was brave. Tears pricked before she could stop them. She laughed bitterly at herself and scrubbed them away. And I stand here wanting to lean into another man's heat. What kind of wolf does that make me? The living kind, he said. She turned fully now. Do you know what it feels like? The bond? It's not gentle. It drags. Some moments I hate you for existing because wanting you feels like betrayal. He took that blow without flinching. Then hate me when you need to. That's not fair. Neither was your grave. Silence again. Snow hissed along stone. Finally he spoke, quieter. When I was 17, my father chose a battle over a harvest pact. We lost both. My little sister starved that winter because caravans never arrived. His mouth flattened. Since then, everyone calls me ruthless. What they mean is, I count costs before blood spills. Luna watched him, startled by the offered wound. Kings did not confess famine ghosts. He continued, If you choose me someday, it will never be because a bond cornered you. It will be because you weighed me and did not look away. Her chest hurt with too many emotions at once. She stepped closer. This time she closed the distance herself. When she touched his face, his eyes shut for one raw second, like prayer. I don't know what someday is, she whispered. Neither do I. She kissed him. Not deep, not claiming. A brief press of cold lips that turned warm almost instantly. He did not seize, did not devour. He answered with exquisite restraint, one hand hovering near her waist until she caught it and pulled it in. The bond surged, bright and aching. Her wolf rose, not frantic now, but alert, curious, reaching. When they parted, both breathing harder, Luna rested her forehead against his. I'm still afraid. I know. But I'm not running. His hand spread over the curve of her belly, gentle, asking. She covered it with hers. From inside, their pup kicked once, strong enough to jolt them both. Theron laughed under his breath, astonished every time. Already opinionated. Her mother's fault, Luna said, and for one suspended heartbeat, she felt almost whole. The strike came before dawn. At second watch, a false horn alarm from the east wall had pulled half the corridor guard to the lower courtyards. In the reshuffle, Corin arrived carrying a healer slate stamped with Edda's emergency sigil, the standing exemption that let apprentices deliver approved night tonics without a second escort. Luna woke to a knock and Edda's apprentice, Corin, slipping in with lowered eyes and a tray. Healer says take while warm, he mumbled, for night cramps. Theron had been called to the lower yard an hour earlier, a border skirmish report, urgent. Luna, heavy with interrupted sleep, took the cup automatically. The tonic smelled of moonmint and clover. Familiar. Safe. She drank half before the bitterness hit. Stronger than before. Green and sharp, like crushed stems left too long in sun. Her stomach dropped. Wait, she said, setting the cup down. What did Edda put in this? Corin froze at the door. Same as always. Look at me. He didn't. Luna moved to stand, and pain knifed through her lower belly so violently she doubled with a gasp. The cup tipped, liquid splashing across the rug in pale streaks. Corin bolted. Guard! Luna shouted, but it came out strangled. Another cramp hit, deeper, grinding. Heat flooded between her thighs. No, no, no. She shoved both hands under her shift and came away with a red smear across her fingers. The room tilted. She braced on the bedpost and forced air into her lungs. Help! She screamed, louder this time, voice tearing. Boots thundered in the corridor. The door slammed wide. Not Theron, Captain Eric first, then two guards. Get Edda! Eric barked, then saw her hands and went white. Luna slid to her knees, clutching her belly. A flutter rippled low and uncertain. She couldn't tell if it was the pup or her own body seizing against pain. Sound collapsed to a high ringing. Theron hit the doorway at a run, hair loose, sword still at his hip from the yard. He took in the scene in one glance. Spilled tonic, blood on her legs, Luna folded over herself and shaking. Something murderous and terrified tore across his face. He dropped beside her. "Luna, look at me. Stay with me." "It's the cup," she gasped. "Corin ran." Theron snatched the fallen cup, sniffed, and his expression turned lethal. "Wolf's bane." Eric swore. "I'll lock down every gate. Bring me the boy alive." Theron snarled. "If he dies before speaking, I'll skin the man who failed." He scooped Luna into his arms, red staining through his shirt, and ran for the healer's chambers. Luna clung to him with one hand and pressed the other hard over her womb, as if pressure alone could hold life in. "Little moon," she whispered through gritted teeth, "stay with me, please." The healer's doors burst open as alarm bells began to ring. The healer's doors burst open as alarm bells began to ring. Etta was already there. Sleeves shoved to her elbows, gray braid whipping as she pointed to the table. "Lay her down, now." Theron did. Blood streaked the blankets in a bright, terrifying arc. Luna's fingers were locked in his shirt, her knuckles white. "Don't leave," she gasped. "I'm here." His voice shook once, then steadied into command. "I'm here, little wolf." Etta shoved a cup at him. "Hold her up. Make her drink." The brew reeked of charcoal, bitter root, and salt. Luna gagged on the first swallow, then forced the rest down while pain tore through her in waves. Etta's hands were firm and clinical at her belly, at the inside of her wrist, listening, measuring. "Come on, pup," the old healer muttered. "Come on." Theron looked between Etta's face and Luna's, reading both for signs he could kill or fix. "Tell me." "Cramping from toxin," Etta snapped. "Not enough blood lost yet to call it ending. Yet. Keep her warm. Keep her breathing slow." Another cramp hit. Luna cried out, curling around it. Theron bent over her, forehead nearly touching hers. "Breathe with me. In 4. Hold. Out 6. She clung to the count like rope over a cliff. Outside, boots pounded. Arik appeared in the doorway with 2 guards dragging Corin between them. The apprentice's lip was split. His eyes rolled wild. "We found him in the lower stables with silver in his boot," Arik said. "Trying to run." Theron didn't look up from Luna. "Alive?" "Unfortunately for him." Corin dropped to his knees. "I didn't mean—" She said it would only make her bleed, not— Theron's head snapped up then, eyes gone molten. "Who?" Corin's gaze skittered to Luna's bloodied shift and broke. "Celine, Frostborn captain. She gave me the vial. Said Lady Guinevere needed proof the grave witch's body was rejecting cursed seed. Said if I refused, they'd hang my mother for theft taxes." Eric slammed him silent with a hand on his shoulder. "He has Brevik's seal on the payment note." Etta hissed through her teeth. "Get him out. I need quiet or I lose both patient and pup." They hauled Corin out as he sobbed apologies into the stone. Luna turned her head, sweat cold, and found Theron's face. "She'll move now," she whispered, "before we can stand." As if summoned by the words, a herald's horn blared from the lower courtyard, 3 formal notes of court decree. Eric reappeared, jaw tight, a parchment in hand. "Moon Court emergency summons," he said. "At noon. Elders invoke succession crisis. Petition demands immediate ceremonial bond between the Crown and Lady Guinevere for kingdom stability." He swallowed. "And presentation of Luna Stoneheart for witch inquest." Theron took the parchment, crushed it in his fist, and very calmly said, "Tell the elders if they want their session, they'll hold it with my wolves at every door." Eric hesitated. "Majesty?" That was not a suggestion. When Eric left, Luna caught Theron's wrist. "No." His brows drew together. No? No hidden blades. No midnight executions. Pain knifed through her again. She wrote it, breath ragged. She wants chaos. Wants you painted tyrant beside her prophecy. She poisoned you, he bit out, and I am still speaking. She tightened her grip despite trembling. So let me. He stared at her as if the answer might kill him either way. Then, slowly, he nodded once. Etta laid a warm hand over Luna's belly and closed her eyes. Long seconds passed. Then her shoulders loosened by a fraction. There, she said. Flutters back. Faint. But there. Luna sobbed once in relief, and pressed both palms over the curve of her womb. Theron bowed his head against her hand. For a heartbeat he looked less like a king than a man at a shrine, blood on his cuffs, praying to anything that listened. By late morning Luna could stand, though each step reminded her exactly how close she had come to losing everything. Etta wrapped her in dark wool and pinned a silver moon brooch at her throat. You are not healed, she warned. I don't need healed. I need upright. Theron entered in formal black, crown torque at his neck, sword belted low. His gaze swept her face, then dropped to the faint stains she hadn't scrubbed entirely from her hands. You should be in bed. And you should stop saying that like I didn't claw out of a grave. She held his stare. If I don't walk into that hall today, I'll spend the rest of my life being dragged into rooms where men decide whether I count as human. The corner of his mouth twitched despite everything. Grim pride. Then we walk in together. On the ride down to Moon Court, Eric leaned in from his saddle. Corin gave us the name of Frostborn's apothecary, Isra. Keeps a private cabinet in the temple annex. Luna looked up sharply. Take me there first. Theron frowned. Court convenes in 20 minutes. Then we won't be late if we ride hard. They did. The annex smelled of dried mint and polished cedar. Shelves climbed to the rafters, packed with stoppered glass and labeled tins. Isra, a thin woman with inked fingertips, went pale when she saw royal guards. We have warrant, Eric said. Isra lifted her chin. From whom? From me, Luna said, and stepped past her. At the back wall, behind innocuous jars of feverfew, she found a locked drawer marked with Frostborn's foxfang crest. Eric offered his dagger hilt first. Luna took it, wedged the tip under the seam, and pried until the lock split. Inside lay 6 vials of clear green tincture nestled in wool. Each bore Guinevere's private seal pressed into blue wax. Luna picked one up. The glass was cold as winter teeth. Bag them, she said to Arik. All of them, and bring the drawer. Isra sank onto a stool. I only mixed what I was ordered. Then you'll testify what you mixed, Luna said, not unkindly. Under oath fire. Moon Court's assembly chamber had been built for spectacle. White stone, high arches, and a circular floor around the judgment stone, a black slab veined with silver where oaths were sworn. Today, every bench was full. Guinevere stood near the center in frost blue silk, serene as first snow. Celine at her shoulder. Brevik with scrolls. Seer Halwyn in temple white, blindfold gleaming. And on a pedestal beside them, the carved prophecy tablet, artfully chipped and stained. Whispers surged when Theron entered. They rose to a roar when Luna walked at his right side. Order! Bellowed the presiding elder, staff striking stone. By ancestral clause, we convene to address succession peril and... Luna stepped out of line, crossed the circle, and before anyone could stop her, she seized the prophecy tablet with both hands and slammed it onto the judgment stone. The crack echoed like thunder. Dust sprayed. A carved corner sheared off, exposing fresh pale rock beneath the fake weathering. Gasps ripped through the chamber. Luna's voice rang clear. I invoke Blood Mother right. Silence dropped hard. Even Guinevere blinked. The elder's mouth opened and closed. That right is archaic. It is law. Luna spread her blood-scabbed palms over her belly. A pregnant she-wolf accused of corruption may demand trial by scent and oath fire before sentence. Here. Now. In daylight. No one moved to gainsay. Blood Mother Right had not been called in 3 generations, but old law was still law. Theron did not intervene. He took one step back and let the circle become hers. The elder swallowed. Very well. Bring flame. Temple attendants hurried to set the oath brazier. Blue-white fire rose, fed by cedar resin and silver salts. Guinevere recovered first. Dramatic, she said lightly, but grief does make women theatrical. This changes nothing. Seer Halwyn has authenticated the fragment. Then he can repeat that under oath fire, Luna said. She nodded to Eric. He stepped forward, placed a cloth-wrapped bundle on the judgment stone, and unrolled it. The wolfsbane vial, 4 matching bottles, the broken drawer lock, and Brevik's payment note taken from Corin's boot. Murmurs exploded. Guinevere's composure cracked at the edges. Planted. Luna ignored her. She took a ceremonial knife from the brazier stand, sliced her palm, and held it above the flame. Blood hissed where it fell. I swear by blood and moon, she said, voice rough but unwavering. I seek no throne stolen by lies. I seek my child's life and lawful place. Let fire judge me. The flame flared and turned deep sapphire blue. A collective intake of breath swept the chamber. Truth. Luna swayed but stayed upright. She turned to Halwyn. Seer, look at me. Blindfolded, he flinched toward her voice. You signed authentication. Did you recover that tablet yourself? No. Did you witness its excavation? No. Did Lady Guinevere or her captain pressure you to certify it? Halwyn's hands trembled. Luna stepped closer, relentless. Under oath fire, Seer? Did they bribe you? Guinevere snapped. You will not badger a temple officer. Luna cut across her. Did they threaten you? Halwyn made a strangled sound. Yes. The word cracked him open. He ripped off the blindfold with shaking fingers, clouded eyes wet. Yes. They paid me and threatened me. The stone was cut last week in Frostborn House. I knew it. Mother, forgive me. I knew it. Chaos erupted. Shouting alphas, elders on their feet, Seleni's hand dropping to her hilt. Luna turned, blood still dripping from her palm, and faced the guard captain at the perimeter. Captain, she said, every syllable iron, arrest Lady Frostborn for treason against crown and pack. For one heartbeat, nobody moved. Then Guinevere screamed and drew a silver blade from her sleeve. She lunged straight at Luna. The chamber blew apart in motion, guards shouting, benches overturning, Theron vaulting the lower rail. But Guinevere was already there, silk flashing, silver aimed for Luna's throat. Luna pivoted on instinct. The blade sliced her shoulder instead of her neck, hot pain blooming. She drove forward, shoulder first, smashing into Guinevere's ribs hard enough to knock the breath from her. They went down together against the judgment stone. Guinevere clawed for Luna's face, snarling. You border-bred carrion! Luna caught her wrist. Kaelin's voice flashed through memory. Thumb line, twist through the gap, use her momentum, and her body obeyed. She rotated Guinevere's hand outward, dropped her weight, and wrenched. Bone popped. The silver knife clattered across the stone. Guinevere shrieked. Luna slammed her forearm across Guinevere's throat and pinned her to the judgment slab, knee braced over her hip. Selene charged. Eric intercepted, tackling her mid-stride. They crashed into a pillar, Selene's dagger skidding away. Theron reached Luna's side, sword out, but stopped when he saw Guinevere fully controlled beneath her. His wolf was in his eyes, feral and proud. Guinevere spat blood at Luna's cheek. He was meant to be mine. Luna wiped the spit away with the back of her hand, face cold as riverstone. A king is not a prize, and my child is not your sacrifice. Guinevere bucked once more, then stilled as two royal guards seized her arms and hauled her upright, wrists bound behind her back. Brevik tried to slip out through the scribe's door. An elder stuck out his staff and tripped him. He hit the floor with a squeal, scrolls flying. Theron stepped into the center ring, voice carrying to the rafters. By crown authority and witness of assembled pacts, Guinevere Frostborn is stripped of title, lands, and succession claim for treason, conspiracy to murder a royal heir, and unlawful execution order at sanctuary ground. Guinevere laughed, ragged and hysterical. You'd unmake one of the oldest houses for her? Theron didn't blink. I unmake rot wherever I find it. He nodded to Eric. Iron cells. No private visitors. Eric saluted. Until sentencing? Until exile. Theron's gaze swept the hall. At dawn in 3 days, she is put aboard a prison ship beyond the northern sea. She never sets foot on pack soil again. Celine, pinned under 2 guards, bared her teeth. And me? Luna answered before Theron could. Accessory to murder and attempted regicide. You stand trial with Brevik. Celine stared at her, then gave a single sharp nod. Warrior's acknowledgement from an enemy beaten clean. As guards dragged the prisoners out, Halwyn sank to his knees before the brazier, sobbing prayers. Etta, summoned midway through chaos, pressed cloth to Luna's bleeding shoulder and muttered, "Could we have one day without blades?" Luna exhaled shakily. Apparently not. Theron stepped in close, hands hovering until she tilted her head permission. Then he touched her, very gently, thumb tracing her jaw, checking she was real. You ordered the arrest, he said, voice rough with awe. She met his gaze. I told you, I'm not running. 3 nights later, the full moon rose round and silver over Stormhold's upper court. Every elder who had demanded her judgment now stood in a wide witness circle, cloaks bright in moonlight. Warriors lined the walls. Etta stood near the brazier with a healer's satchel and a look that dared anyone to faint. Theron wore no crown tonight, only black trousers, open collar, and the scars he no longer bothered to hide. Luna wore white wool belted beneath her belly, her cut shoulder bandaged, her palms clean. When the moon cleared the highest ridge, Theron stepped forward into the center and knelt. A murmur rippled through the witnesses. He bowed his head and bared his throat, total vulnerability from an alpha king. His voice carried, low and steady. Luna Stoneheart. Before elders, wolves, and moon, I ask, do you choose me freely? Prophecy or no prophecy, crown or no crown? The night held still. Luna felt every eye on her, every old fear, every new hope. She remembered dirt crushing her chest. She remembered his hand stopping short until she nodded. She remembered him saying Kaylin's name. She stepped to him and touched 2 fingers to his throat, pulse strong beneath skin. Yes, she said, freely. I choose you. His eyes closed briefly, relief like a physical thing. He rose. Then choose once more. May I mark you? A shiver ran down her spine. Not fear, not exactly. Anticipation edged with raw emotion. She tilted her chin, exposing the junction of neck and shoulder. Yes, mate. The word broke softly from her mouth. Around them, wolves inhaled. Theron framed her face in both hands, giving her one last heartbeat to pull away. She didn't. He pressed his forehead to hers first, breath mingling, bond humming hot and bright. Mine, he whispered, then corrected, reverent. If you remain willing. Yours, she answered. And you are mine. His mouth found her skin just below the curve of her neck, warm and deliberate. He kissed once, twice, then his canines pierced. Pain sparked sharp as flint, then flooded outward in a rush of heat so intense her knees nearly buckled. She gasped against his shoulder as sensation transformed, ache to fire, fire to pleasure threaded with power. The world narrowed to pulse and moonlight, and his hands anchoring her. The bond detonated fully. She felt him, his storm-dark wolf, his old grief, his relentless protectiveness, his fierce, disbelieving joy, pour through the open channel. Her own answered, grave dirt terror, Kalen's memory, stubborn rage, rising love, the wild, unkillable core of her. Their heartbeats locked into one driving rhythm. Inside her, the pup kicked hard, a joyous thump that made them both laugh breathlessly against each other. Theron drew back, blood bright on his lips, eyes blazing molten gold. A silver ring of light flared briefly under Luna's skin at the mark, then settled like moon warmth into her bones. She reached up, gripped his jaw, and turned him to bare his shoulder where old battle scars crossed new muscle. My turn. His voice came rough. Always. She bit. His breath punched out in a growl that turned half moan, half wolf. She felt the moment her teeth broke skin and the bond surged the other direction, her claim, her promise, her strength staking space in him. Pain flashed, then dissolved into a deep, dizzying pleasure that left his hands shaking where they held her waist. When she released, she licked the mark once, sealing. Silver light flashed across his shoulder and sank in. Mates, she whispered. He cupped the back of her neck, forehead to forehead, both of them breathing hard. No grave will ever hold you again. Luna smiled through wet eyes, then run beside me, not ahead of me. A howl rose from the walls, one wolf, then dozens, then the whole mountain answering. Elders bowed their heads. Arik thumped fist to chest. Even stern Etta wiped at her eyes before pretending she hadn't. Theron wrapped Luna in his arms and held her while the bond settled. No longer clawing, no longer frantic. Steady, deep, home. Mine, he murmured once more into her hair. She kissed the mark on his shoulder. Yours. Spring came to Stormhold in meltwater and crocus shoots between stones. In the great hall, beneath banners of 5 packs knotted into one, the Ratification Council stood to witness new law. Theron sat the high seat. Luna stood beside him at a separate carved chair bearing the moon crest of Sanctuary Office. The scribe read aloud as Luna watched faces in the crowd. Skeptical alphas, relieved mothers, hard-eyed warriors, temple delegates trying not to fidget. By joint authority of Alpha King Theron Stormborn and Moon Consort Luna Stoneheart, the scribe intoned, the grave mercy decree is enacted. No accused witch or corruption bearer may be sentenced without material evidence, sworn counsel, and testimony from 2 independent healers. Sanctuary stones are inviolable under pain of treason. Luna stepped forward and pressed her signet into wax. Theron did the same. Arik announced sentences after. Brevik stripped and sent to labor archives under guard for falsifying court decrees. Celine, convicted of unlawful execution and conspiracy, rank broken and condemned to 10-year wall watch at the far northern outposts, alive, armed, and far from power. Corin, who testified, spared prison but exiled from healer practice. Etta took his mother into Stormhold kitchens anyway, muttering about boys and bad choices. Seer Halwyn publicly confessed and accepted penance service at border shrines for the rest of his years. At dawn on the 3rd day, Guinevere Frostborn was marched in irons to the harbor. Luna did not attend. She stood on the terrace instead, one hand on her belly, and listened to gulls wheel as the prison ship vanished north into fog. By late spring, the morning sun was warm on stone. Luna leaned over the palace terrace rail, breathing through a tightening that wrapped her middle like a belt. Theron stood behind her, hands braced at her hips, trying and failing to hide panic. Is this? Yes, Etta snapped from the doorway, already rolling up sleeves. This is labor, Your Majesty. Babies do not send written notice. Another contraction hit. Luna gripped the rail and laughed breathlessly through it. Of course she picked sunrise. Hours later, with sky bright and birds loud in the pines below, Luna gave one final hoarse cry and pushed their daughter into Edda's waiting hands. A furious wail split the air. Theron made a strangled sound that might have been laughter, might have been tears. He knelt beside Luna as Edda laid the squalling, slick, perfect infant on her chest. Dark hair, strong lungs, tiny fist already opening and closing like she meant to grab the world. "Hello, little moon," Luna whispered, exhausted and radiant. Theron touched one shaking finger to the baby's palm. She gripped him immediately. "She has your grip," he said, voice wrecked. "And your timing," Luna murmured. They stood together when Luna could stand, Theron scarred and barefoot, Luna unbowed with blood on her thighs and sunlight on her face, their daughter wrapped between them in a white blanket. Below, wolves in the courtyard looked up and began to howl, not in mourning this time, but welcome. Theron kissed Luna's temple. "What future do we build first, moon consort?" She looked out over the ridges, over roads no longer lined with witch notices, over a kingdom learning new laws. "One where no one buries our women for fear," she said. Their daughter squeaked, as if in agreement. Luna smiled, leaned into her mate, and together they turned toward the day.